Hello, everyone, and welcome to Armstrong in the Loop podcast. I'm your host, Seth Prentice. And today, I'm honored to be joined by the owner of Curio Cool in Zelienople, Jason Shorr. Jason, welcome to the show.
Hey, how you doing, Seth?
Jason, you have a great background behind you with all these vintage Star Wars toys. And, early on in the pandemic, we had Lauren on to talk about the art side of Curio. And I wanted to bring you on to talk about the other important part, which is your own hobby of vintage toys and collectibles.
Yes, yeah.
Uh, Talk to me about how you got into collecting toys and how this became something that you do now on a daily basis.
I think for a lot of toy collectors, it started back, of course, when I was a kid, and I would get all the toys I could. And then sometime around college, my mom sold everything at a garage sale for like pennies on the dollar. And now I'm just trying to relive my childhood a little bit. And I just like to find the stuff and acquire the stuff and try to get some of those feelings back and enjoyment. So yeah, I think that's it's about how it all happens. Um, Somewhere around 20 years ago or so, I started going to a lot of the toy conventions, and I always thought, hey, I could probably do this myself at some point, you know. And but life gets in the way, and things happen, and eventually, eventually I just said, let's make this a go. So yeah.
Now, I see behind you your big love, which is Star Wars. Did it
Yes.
always start at Star Wars, or was there another line that you got hooked on first, but then Star Wars overtook it?
I'm trying to think. I remember I was 5 years old when Star Wars came out in 1977. I know I went and saw it in the theaters, and so that was probably it. Like I was five, and boom, toys, Star Wars toys until I was 12 or 13 for my birthdays was everything, Christmas and birthday. So, but in there was just so many cool toys that came out during that time period of like the early 70s into the mid 80s. So even during that time, I was anything that was monsters or action figures or had suction cups or made noises, I would be buying. I used to love all that stuff. But Star Wars is always kind of like that thing that resonated with me. I loved the mythology of it. I still love Greek mythology and stuff today, and I love the storytelling. And so that's just kind of been my main focus. Uh, I've just always been into Star Wars. So as an adult, I've tried to recollect all kinds of Star Wars things from the vintage line mostly. That's what I enjoy the most. So
Now, with Star Wars, you have something that's also very unique where the toy lines actually carried itself through from the 70s, and then it had a little rebirth in the 90s. Then the new movies came out, episodes 1, 2, and 3, and then you had the recent series of 7, 8, and 9. So the toy collection's really been going on for almost 40 years.
yeah, yeah. And I found myself, like a lot of people did, starting to get a little caught up in it. I remember when the first line came back out, I think it was like 95, where they are all the buffed up guys. I started buying those because it was our first exposure to some Star Wars toys in a long time. And I thought, what am I doing? And that's when they started doing they tried to make it collectible. And people were like, well, there's a short sabered Luke in a car, in a tray that's made for a long saber, and like all this stuff. So I don't know. I just got out of that. And then I have to say again, every time, like the new figures are really great, and the Black Series is phenomenal. I started buying. I was like, if I buy just the bad guys from the Force Awakens, that'll be good. But they just came out with too many, and really hard to find. This stuff's hard to find anymore. Remember, we were younger. We could go to the store, and there was just rows and racks and pegs full of figures. And now there's like a tiny little section in Walmart. So, and usually it's empty. So
Yeah.
even before the pandemic, right? So I just said, hey, I'm going to stick with the vintage. It's fun to find. It's fun to meet the people. That's what it's been so cool. I've met so many people. In fact, my like adult friend base right now has been based on toys, and it's really neat to share some of that with people. So through the years, the people I've met, the places I've gone, the stuff I've seen dealing with the vintage Star Wars collecting is really like as important as the figures themselves to have. So yeah.
Well, when people come into your store and see your vintage collection, does that bring back memories for them that they pass on down to their kids and you start to see, maybe a G.I. Joe collection comes back or Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which is coming back again?
Right. Yeah, it's pretty awesome. I've had usually people come in the store and it's just the way that it is. If it's a couple, let's say a man and woman come in, and I say, welcome to Curio. We specialize in handmade stuff by local artists. And I said, I also have a room of vintage and collectible toys. And immediately the husband looks at the wife, looks like it's for permission, I guess, and then heads to the room. And I hear, whoa, I had this or I had that. Every toy collector hears that. I used to have this. And then he'll call his wife in, and she reluctantly will go in, and they'll talk about stuff. But I love that because I get to hear them talk about their childhood and the toys they had and how they probably blew it up with a firecracker or lost it in the creek. And I remember the same things, And then something else really cool that happened just yesterday. There was a little boy who didn't want to go to the doctor, and he had been to the store before, and he had to go to the doctor for a yearly checkup, and his mom used our store as bribe. Say, if you go to the doctor and you're really good, I'll take you to the toy store and I'll take you to Curio and check it out. And that was and he got to spend time in here, and that made my heart feel warm to know that he was just really into it. So yeah, that's pretty cool.
That's awesome. While we have the chance, can we see what the room looks like behind you?
Yeah, so we have two rooms here. Our old space was really small. We're in a much bigger space now. And I created this room. There's lots of lights. It's a little more sterile looking in a way because I have the glass cabinets and all. It's more the vintage and a little bit of the higher end price stuff. And then we have an entire basement, which I'd love to show you sometime too. The basement is fantastic as well. But this room, so when you come in, it starts behind me here. You can see with the Star Wars, I have 3 cases. Wow. And as it moves down the cases, I should go this way. I have a whole thing of G.I. Joe figures. They're not carded, but the collection I got them from, the guy saved the entire card back. Not just cut out the file, but saved the whole card back. And it's a little bumpier than I thought. And so yeah, I have all those figures in plastic little blister packs I put on there. And then behind me this way, if I turn, is a whole wall of G.I. Joe vehicles and different things with their boxes. And then as I come over here, oh yeah, I always have this, you can see this TV down here. It's a VCR TV combo, so I can play old VCR VHS tapes. And then just a lot of this is the more modern Star Wars, but it's pretty neat with the comic packs and some of the figures that I know that kids aren't going to buy and just rip open usually, which is fine if that's what they want to do. Not the vintage, I won't accept that. No, but downstairs has more of the $5 kind of variety that I know that kids will probably open and enjoy. And then I have another smaller case over here. I can kind of go down. That case has a lot of like loose figures from different lines and various things. And then some Beast Wars up top and Power Rangers and a few other things. So yeah, so it's a small room, but it's packed full of goodness, I always say. So.
Oh, this is awesome.
Thanks. Thank you very much.
Now, if you were to talk to someone about wanting to get into the vintage toy collecting, what are some tips that you would have for them? And I'm sure it's going to be first select the line that you want or the brand you want, but
yeah,
it's a little more than that.
One thing that's really neat now that wasn't there when I started out. When I started out, literally there was a newspaper you would open up, and it had toy shops all over the U.S. in it, and they would list what they had like that month. And you would call and say, do you still have this? And if they did, you'd send like a money order, and they'd send it to you, and you hope they weren't lying about it. But now, just skipping past eBay, I'm saying on Facebook, you can join some awesome groups where the communities are really close-knit, and I've made some friends even through that, and a few other states that I've visited and talked to. But that's a good way to get some toys. You can see lots of pictures. You can ask for references on people. So that's really good. And there's something for everyone. Like if you are into Cabbage Patch Kids, you can go into a Cabbage Patch Kids site. For you, it's pretty neat. Otherwise, really, go into your local toy shop like this. We're all over in different places, and we like to help each other out. So people come here, and I tell them different places that I've been or where to go. There's local toy shows that happen, and that's a great place because I still like to go and touch whatever it is, look at it, turn it around, talk to the person. There's sometimes a story behind it, which is really cool. Find out the story, and yeah, I would say if you're a beginning collector, figure out something that you're not worried about the value. Not worried about the money value. You're worried about the personal value, what it means to you, and then go from there. If you're in it because you're trying to invest, forget about it. At some point, things just go up and down and up and down. You never know. So if you know, then in 1978, I would have bought a bunch of 12-back Star Wars figures and held on to them. So.
Well, back in 1988, I'm sure you would also have tried to have gotten the mail away Boba Fett figure, but that's
right.
a story for a different day.
Yeah.
So the one question I do have for you, though, is there a figure in your collection or maybe multiple toys that really have a story to tell for you?
Yeah, I guess I kind of anticipated you'd ask me that, or at least I'd hope you would. So I brought along this, which is a 12-back Darth Vader, and they call it a 12-back because there were the 12 original figures, and they were actually illustrated on the back. They weren't even photographed yet. They're kind of all illustrated. And so this stands out to me. This, of course, wasn't my personal one from when I was a kid. I opened it up and played with it. But Darth Vader means a lot, and this figure means a lot to me because when I got back into collecting in my adulthood, I bought that figure for a really good price through the little newspaper I told you about, and I got it, and I was so excited. It was like the main thing in my collection, and it still is, but it was the main expensive thing in my collection. And at the time, it was like unbelievably priced. It was I think it was like $100 I picked it up for, and that was expensive for me, and was like worried about just paying that much money for it, but it meant something to me. And because it meant something to me because I remember my dad taking me to see Star Wars, and we had no idea. There weren't trailers out there everywhere. There was no internet to like rip apart the movie before it even came out. There was no spoiler alerts because you didn't know. And my dad took me, and we sat down at the movie theater, and I just remember Darth Vader walking in as his first beginning parts of the movie after the stormtroopers break through, and then this black figure, this silhouette walks into the all white hallway. And I was like, who is this guy? He's barely on camera, but he just excited me, the mask, everything. So I kind of have a Darth Vader thing. I have a lot of Darth Vader figures at home, and he's just one of them. But that's my favorite from that toy line. The other favorite figure I don't have. I need to find it still, and it is an alien. Kenner made it, same as the Star Wars figure, but it's an 18-inch, so like this big alien doll. They don't like to use the term doll, but it gives you the idea of the size. And it was put out, and it was actually a little bit scary for kids because it had like the jaw that extended. It had a glow-in-the-dark head. It was created by an artist, H.R. Giger, who is famous for the biomechanical art style. And I had one, and my mom sold it when I went to college. I've seen them since, but it's hard to find complete and nice. And I've been focused on Star Wars for so long. I think now I'd like to pick that one other item up. I know a local toy store that has one. I might go get it. But like I said, I still go shopping at places too. So
That's awesome. And I love the fact that you're still so passionate about it that you're helping to create generations now,
Yeah.
His daughters, they're getting involved because of something that you're helping to create now.
Yeah, thank you. It is exciting. When we did the downstairs, my wife said, "You realize you've created a room that adults can come down and enjoy." I usually play 80s music, and there's a pinball machine and stuff. But she said, also, this is the first time some of these kids are seeing a room like we talked about where there's figures just on the walls, and there's different types, more girl-oriented toys, more boy-oriented toys, if you want to look at it that way. And the kids they go down. I didn't know if they'd be into it as much, and you just hear them downstairs. They love it, and they get really excited. And so my wife's like, you've created that for them, and that's what I love too. Yeah.
Now, I know that you're buying, but I'm sure you're still selling not only your collection, but if others would have figures in their own collection or collectibles in general, are you still buying from others?
Yeah, no one leaves the store without me saying, hey, if you have any old toys in your attic, basement, crawl space, storage, let me know. I'm always buying. I've had some strange things come through the door that I haven't bought, just because I don't. Sometimes things look vintage and they've been out like very recently. You can still buy them in the store. But I look for toys from the 70s, 80s, and 90s. Basically and mostly action based. I do have some My Little Ponies downstairs, and I have some My Little Pet Shop toys. But my heart is with those fun toys from the 70s and 80s. And then, like you said, there's been a resurgence. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles are back out, and some of the new Star Wars stuff, and different lines are finding their way back out again. And they have through the years. The Mutant Ninja Turtles have been, have many different, I don't know what you want to say. They've had many different looks over the years, and they've been coming out. So some of them I still like to get, but yeah, the 70s and 80s are really where I enjoy. When I see someone walking the door with a box, I get really excited, and we look through it, and then I like to hear the stories, like I said. So, or I go to people's houses. You can give me a call, and I'll come out and take a look. If you don't want to dig around through things, I just had a woman get a hold of me. She's in her late 70s, and her husband, and these were the toys of her 50-year-old son. And they said they had all these great Star Wars figures, and I was so excited. And they drove to their house in Pittsburgh, and I got there and I pulled out a baggie with 30 beat up, destroyed figures in it, like legs missing, and they thought they had a gold mine. And I actually didn't even buy it. I said, I'm sorry, I can't even give you anything that you would feel comfortable with having. So we just kind of passed on it. But I was there for like a half an hour to talk to them, so it was neat.
Yeah. That's awesome. We'll share your contact information, the website as well, in the podcast link, so that people can go onto your site or give you a call. Anything that you would like to leave on that might spark someone to start their own collection?
I don't know what I'd say to that. I guess I would just say that just think about what resonates with you. And if you see it somewhere, maybe don't jump at it and buy it right away. Think about it a little bit. But you also have to remember that stuff goes and it's hard to find. If you see something and you let it go too long, it might be gone the next day. You never know. But you don't want to jump into something and not think it through a little, because you're going to go down a crazy rabbit hole in collecting. And there's branches everywhere. So you have to watch yourself a little bit, especially with the pocketbook.
That is true. Well, Jason, I thank you so much for your time today, and I'd love to have you back on, and I want to see the rest of the toy room, so definitely going to have to come on down and check it out.
Great. Thank you, Seth. Thank you so much.
For Armstrong in the Loop podcast, I'm Seth Prentice, keeping you in the loop. Are you enjoying Armstrong in the Loop podcast? Great news! All past and current episodes are available on popular streaming apps and websites. Search Armstrong in the Loop podcast and subscribe today.